Hello again. So as you know, I picked Ukraine for the North East Hemisphere, and I read The Gates of Europe, A History of Ukraine by Serhii Plokhy. And I am going to start the video by saying 3 ways I related to Ukraine. Then I'm going to give some history on Ukraine and follow that with my review of the book and end with 5 fun facts of Ukraine. So let's get started. It was a little bit harder to find 3 ways to relate since I had to do some like cultural digging since this was a straight up history book. But like a global one, I think there's a deep connection between the language and the cultural identity, especially between like the Ukrainians battling a lot of other nations for independence. And number 2 would be embroidery. A lot of the traditional like folklore clothing includes a lot of embroidery and a lot of ribbons, and Mexican designs are similar, so you can see the pictures. When I was in my master's in Scotland, I got really homesick, and so I taught myself to embroider because it reminded me of like my Mexican background. So here are also some embroideries that I made. And the third one is Pizanka. It's their egg decoration. So it was initially a tradition to welcome spring and ward off evil spirit, and then it was later tied to Christianity, and now that's why we use a lot of like the decoration of Easter eggs. But I just thought that was a really cool tradition, because I remember like decorating eggs, and that always used to make me really happy. Okay, so let's go into the history. So I'm starting in the 9th century. So the 9th century was the foundation of Kievan Rus, which was this huge land, and different princes were given different lands. There was a big divide in ideology, principally in backing the Orthodox Church versus the Catholic one, which was influenced by Poland, and they were all kind of fighting to rule Kiev, as its capital was made to replicate Constantinople, which was revered due to the Roman success and its grandeur in the Roman Empire. So in 1187, a Kievan chronicle first uses the word Ukraine to describe the steppe borderland, which, as we know, like as a linguist, it's really interesting that language and documentation really provides a stronghold for identity and like reference of culture. In the 10th century, Prince Vladimir the Great, who accepts Orthodox Christianity, and starts the reform mainly in the east part of Ukraine. So he's also on one of their banknotes. And in the 11th century, Prince Yaroslav the Wise advocates for Ukrainian nationalism, and he completes the St. Sophia Cathedral construction. He is also on one of their banknotes. And in 1240, Kiev falls to the Mongols. Temujin, better known as Genghis Khan, is believed, he believed in allowing people to basically like just comply to his will, but he like allowed them to continue their traditions and their religion. So that allowed, Ukrainian nationalism to continue thriving. And then as that's happening, Poland is also continuing to put pressure on part of Ukraine, primarily the west side. And Ukraine is divided as Poland gets land and is primarily Greek Catholic. In 1648 to 1657, the Cossack uprising against Polish rule begins and creates the state known as the Hetmanate. And they're looking for an independent Ukraine, basically. They struggle to gain independence from Poland versus Russia versus the Mongols, and they continue to be serfs during this time as well. They're not giving really the right to independence from any of these nations. In 1707, Ivan Mazepa, one of the hetmen from the Hetmanate, so he's a Cossack, he's upset by Russian assault on Cossack rights, and he sides with Sweden and leads a revolt, which wasn't very successful, but he's on the banknote as well. And then in 1721, the Peace of Nystad makes Russia a European power. In 1764, Russia liquidates the hetmanate as part of the centralizing reforms of Catherine II of Russia. And she begins to describe Ukraine as Little Russia, which, further conflates like the current conflict or genocide that's going on in Ukraine, because Putin, like we know, is not is of that same belief that Ukraine is just a part of, another part of Russia. So 1818, first grammar of the Ukrainian language is published. In the 19th century, Russia bans the use of Ukrainian in its own lands in an effort to make the population more Russified, under the Minister of the Interior Petr Valov and Emperor Alexander II. In the 1890s, hunger leads to increased immigration of Ukrainian peasantry to other lands, including the United States and Canada. In 1914, as we all know, World War I begins. Ukraine becomes a battleground between Russian Empire, Austria-Hungary, and Germany. In 1917, there's the collapse of the Russian monarchy, which opens the door to the creation of Ukraine and a state led by the revolutionary parliament, the Central Rada. In 1918, this Central Rada declares its independence. In 1921, Ukrainian territories are divided between Soviet Russia, Poland, Romania, and Czechoslovakia. So again, Ukraine continues to be kind of ruled by the powers around it, and it is not really given autonomy or sovereignty within its land. And still in this year, 1921, Ukrainian vernacular is printed and continues to be used in these years. In the 1920s, there comes the Industrial Revolution led by Bolshevik, which means the population increases rapidly, but the land and the food are very scarce. So there's overcrowding, and during this time, to appease the peasants of the land, the Soviet Union encourages the practice of Ukrainian language and culture and starts to send like propaganda in Ukrainian in order for the peasants basically to comply with serfdom. This is later reversed in 1930. In the 1930s. In 1932, 4 million Ukrainians die as a result of a man-made famine known today as a Holodomor, which is basically when the Russian Empire knew that like the Ukrainians did not have enough food, but because they really just wanted the wheat production and I don't remember what other production, but they basically just gave resources to the serfs that were producing the product that they needed, which is awful. 34 members of the Organization of Ukraine Nationalist Party assassinate Polish Minister of the Interior, showing their dissatisfaction with Polish rule. In 1937, Stalin takes over and sends millions to the Gulag, puts hundreds of thousands on death row as well. In 1939, World War II begins. 1941, Nazi Germany come in. Ukrainians think, okay, great, like this has to be better than what Stalin's doing. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Hitler allowed for Ukraine to basically be occupied by German and Romanian forces, and it also turned Ukraine into the main killing field of the Holocaust, costing millions of Ukrainians of all ethnic backgrounds their lives. In 1945, Ukraine becomes a member of the United Nations. In 1956, de-Stalinization begins. 1986, the Chernobyl disaster kills more than 10,000 people from the explosion, and many millions health is affected after as well. 1991, the Soviet Union falls. In 1996, Ukraine trades its nuclear warhead inherited from the Soviet Union to Russia for its sovereignty. In the year 2000, Chernobyl power plant is finally shut down. In 2005, Viktor Yushchenko is elected, causing tensions with Russia over gas. And in 2013, Russia starts a trade war with Ukraine. In 2014, due to violent protest in Ukraine, Yushchenko is removed from office, and Russia launches a hybrid attack against Ukraine, led by Vladimir Putin, taking the Crimea, which is an area like right under Ukraine, which Russia has no direct land access to. In 2019, Russian President Putin officially opens a bridge linking the southern Russia to Crimea, an action Ukraine calls illegal. In 2019, television comedian Vladimir Zelensky wins the presidential election. He is currently the president of Ukraine. In 2022, on February 2nd, Russia invades Ukraine, and over 10,000 have been killed since. A month after this began, the International Court of Justice ordered a ceasefire, which Putin did not listen to, and there continues to be an ongoing conflict. And as we know, as I mentioned, Putin does not accept Ukraine as a separate people. He sees them as an integral part of the Russian national patrimony. So on to the book review. I honestly really found this book so comprehensive and helpful, and I think starting where it did, like back in the 9th century, I mean, I think it started like way back when, but like starting that early in history really allowed me to understand why certain certain people in Russia, including Vladimir Putin, sees Ukraine as an extension of Russian people because, of them all being part of the Russians. But I think the book does a really great job also of explaining how like linguistic divides and national identities really shape the way a nation is created, and how people are, have different needs, which creates, which allows the creation of these nations. So I thought it was a really good, comprehensive explanation of, the struggle that Ukraine has faced throughout the years of fighting for their sovereignty, and it helped like contextualize the current conflicts. So I would really recommend it. And I think the chunks are divided into really like absorbable chapters. I really like that. Okay, and I wanted to end the video with 5 fun facts of Ukraine. So number 1, it is the 2nd largest country by area in Europe. Number 2, it is the largest producer of sunflower seeds. And number 3, the first song to be performed in space was I Look at the Sky and Think, sung by Ukrainian cosmonaut Pavlo Popovich on the Vostok 2 spacecraft, specifically for Ukrainian spacecraft designer Serhii Plokhy in 1962. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering some of these names. Number 4, there are 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Ukraine. 1 would be the Carpathian Biosphere, 2 would be the St. Sophia Cathedral, and 3 would be the whole city of Lviv. Number 5 is that the world's longest musical instrument, the trombita, can be found in Marhanets, Ukraine. It is a horn that has been crafted from locally sourced willow. It measures over 80 meters, which is 262 feet. So thank you for watching, and follow my Instagram if you want to see what my next pick is. I will see you guys next Friday. Thank you.